Hello, everyone. Welcome to our KaiNexus Quarterly Updates webinar. My name is Ryan Rippey. I'm the Customer Enablement Manager here at KaiNexus, and I am joined today by KaiNexus CEO Greg Jacobson. Go ahead, Greg.
Good afternoon, Ryan.
How are you today?
I'm good. I'm really excited to be a part of your webinar today.
And this is your moment to shine, Greg. I'm just here to show you the bells and whistles of KaiNexus. Greg and I appreciate the time today, everyone. For those of you new to this webinar series, welcome aboard. The purpose of these webinars is for us to review some of our biggest features released each quarter. So today, Greg and I will spend the next 30-45 minutes, probably closer to the half-hour mark, exploring features from our Q3 releases of this year. Here at KaiNexus, we are big fans of Simon Sinek, so I will allow Greg to use the start with why approach behind each feature we discussed today, and then I'll follow up with just a brief walkthrough of the how and the what in KaiNexus. Greg, anything to add before we get started in here?
Yeah, I know we were having a little fun at the beginning talking about whose webinar this is or isn't, and I think I will take a moment of why for a second on the entire webinar, but really this webinar is for our customers. I think the power of applications being delivered on the web in SaaS platforms is that we have to continue to push the platform forward, to continue to delight our customers, because otherwise our customers are going to find other solutions for their problems. And about 90% of all of the enhancements that go into KaiNexus are from direct feedback. So in many ways, this is no longer KaiNexus' platform. Mm-hmm. This is the entire KaiNexus community platform. And we put a lot of time and money towards enhancing the product, probably much larger amount percentage-wise than one would expect. And so thank you for joining, and thank you for giving us this feedback. And I think we'll have fun going through what we did in Q3.
Yeah, all right. So before we actually get started, Greg, I'm just going to go over some of the housekeeping items here. Now, the webinar is being recorded, so we will go ahead and send out the slides and recording to everyone after the webinar. Also, if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type those into the chat box. We will do our best to answer those in real time, as well as at the very end of the webinar if we have some time left over, which we should. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we have on the agenda for today, Greg. So, Greg, we've had one big release since our Q2 updates webinar, which was 2.2.10.
It was kind of interesting because we did a release in the very last week of Q2, mm-hmm. and then we just did a release in the very first week of Q4. So normally we're on about a 4 or maybe a 5-week cadence. And it just happened the way it all worked out with our user conference and the size of the prior Q2 release and the size of the Q4 release. There's just one. Having said that, there are a lot of gems here.
Yeah, and I'm really excited for when we do our Q4 webinar, taking a look at some of the releases that just came out this past weekend. So we'll probably see some of those in action as we're working through here, but we'll let everyone know that, of course, we will have a webinar at the end of the month to take a deeper dive into that 2.3 release. Specifically today, some of the features that we'll be taking a look at are going to include ROI projections, weighted scores, user preference on maximum window size of an item work panel. That's a lot of words there. We'll go over exactly what that means.
It's super simple, but it saves a lot of clicks.
And then from there, we'll take a look at the controlling the location of a legend in a chart. There's a few chart enhancements that came out in that 2.2.10 release that we can take a look at. Exporting PDF to A3 size paper. This is a small feature that was added, but I'm really excited to show that. And then, honestly, though, what my personal favorite is, Greg, is the more level type and default attribute icons that Ben and I took some time to put together, and we're going to show those to everybody at the end of the webinar today, too.
Handcrafted.
Yes.
Hand-selected.
We went in and actually used little stencils and drew out what those icons look like in KaiNexus. All right, Greg, let's hop into KaiNexus and take a look at some of these features.
Let's do it.
Greg, I'm actually really excited for this webinar. I have been working with Noah, our CE solutions engineer, here in the showroom.
Newest member of the team.
Newest member of the team. This is his baby. This is where, for those of you who attended our user conference this year, shortly after the user conference, we've unveiled the showroom, giving customers access to best practices, examples of how other people are using KaiNexus. And so I'm really excited to drive our demo and our webinar today specifically through showroom. Go ahead.
And to be the why guy, the why was we kept getting asked, well, what are other people doing? I want to just see what are my possibilities, how are people using KaiNexus in other ways. And while we obviously couldn't go in and log people into other people's instances, what we could do is kind of distill some of the best practices that we were seeing, either from kind of categorical ways of using it. Oh, well, this is a typical kind of bottom-up Kaizen template, for instance, or kind of a top-down. Here's a good project management template. But also the amount of things that you can configure and create and tailor the experience that you're trying to provide for your improvement methodology is so refined now that sometimes we forget. And doing the showroom, which I loved the approach that Noah and the entire CE team took. It wasn't just Noah, of kind of that IKEA-esque. I don't know if you want to kind of show that down there, but it's almost like you're walking through IKEA and you're first seeing, well, show me what a kitchen looks like, and then you get all the individual kitchen accoutrement, if you will, and then show me what a bedroom looks like. And so we've broken down KaiNexus into the 5 main areas of top-down, bottom-up, strategy deployment, KPIs, and training certifications. And so you can kind of see how those all work.
And KaiNexus, of course, can be made so simple for your end users. But again, there's so much configuration and customization that can be done. And I think the showroom does a really great job of capturing all of that. So not to plug the showroom too much, but of course, if you have not reached out to your CE representative to take advantage of getting a login to take a look at showroom and start to pick out some things that you would like to see within your instance, we highly encourage you to do. This is now live and available to you.
And you mentioned simplicity, and I literally was just walking into a meeting earlier today where we were talking to a customer, and they were essentially expressing that they think they had made things a little too complicated. So I think the CE team will be giving recommendations, our customer experience team will be giving recommendations, oftentimes kind of, sometimes subtly, just pushing people in certain directions if people aren't asking. But if people are asking, we always try to recommend keep things simple, stupid, and the KISS principle. And that always seems to increase and drive continuous improvement in organizations. Certainly on top-down efforts, there's going to be some more complexity. People that are really managing and driving large-scale projects are probably comfortable with increasing the complexity. But if you're ever at a fork in the road, always pick the simpler option, in my opinion.
Couldn't agree more. So Greg, we have an A3 cheat sheet in here that we're going to be working off of. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into this project. Now the A3 itself isn't going to be populated with any live data, but I really loved this example that we actually got from a customer, and we have hanging up now on the door here in KaiNexus.
Door to the war room.
Exactly, at the headquarters here. So the first thing I want to start off with here, Greg, is in our Q2 Updates webinar, we reviewed new features as part of our advanced ROI add-on module that allow you to keep track of your investment as well as split impact across multiple locations. So to take things a step forward, we've added the ability to now forecast ROI and track actual performance to plan. And so this will give visibility into the potential versus actual ROI so that your organization can ultimately get better at forecasting results.
Yeah, so the why here, Ryan, is we have, I would say, somewhere around 10 to 20% of our customer base is really interested in tracking and logging the exact ROI of an improvement. And mostly what we're talking about here is kind of financial savings, revenue generation, and time savings. If I had to kind of simplify, you also with the advanced ROI can log things like resources and product as well, if you want to get into that refinement. And so what the situation was is that kind of the base KaiNexus didn't provide enough visibility into breaking those out. So for instance, you mentioned the location impact. So now you have a situation where you can say, hey, we did this improvement and it helped factory A by 50,000, and it also helped factory B by 50,000. So you can actually track that.
Yep.
And then we have a number of organizations that are trying to get better at forecasting. They're doing an improvement. They're saying, hey, I think this is going to benefit the organization by $1 million if we implement this improvement or this series of improvements. And so now they'll be able to put in some projections.
Yep.
Right, they'll be able to initially put in what's our target savings to be $1 million. Might take a year to do that type of complex project.
Right.
And then as time goes on, they'll be able to update that as a forecast, but still maintain their initial target.
Yep.
And then when it actually completes, they'll be able to log the completion of it, so they can really start to understand how they're doing from a kind of projection standpoint.
So let's take a look at exactly what that looks like in KaiNexus. So I've gone ahead and put resolution on this particular A3 problem solving project. And so if I jump over to our resolution section here, we'll see everyone's going to be familiar with submitting the resolution, but now we also have these options here to submit that forecast and submit your target. And so probably, Greg, best practice initially is starting out with that target.
Yep.
So if I'll go in here and go ahead and submit this target, here is where we'll be able to come in and determine what the specific impacts we'll have in here, as well as any sort of investment. And to take it a step further, once you've gone in and added the particular financial investment, as you mentioned, any sort of resources or anything that it's going to take to ultimately complete this project, you'll probably then at that point want to go ahead and activate it, right? Put your team in place, put some action items. So let's actually move this into an active status. So we'll activate this project, and then the next step to this, Greg, is going to be actually going in and submitting your forecast.
Okay.
So as you're working through that particular project, you'll come in and you'll submit that forecast. Within the forecast, you'll be able to again put in what those specific time, efforts, and
completely configurable. And a lot of organizations will kind of take our default, but a lot of them, especially our advanced ROI users, will really kind of push the boundaries of how many different kinds of impacts they're trying to capture.
Exactly. And so as you submit that target and then you submit your forecast, you'll be able to go in and make edits to that forecast. You'll be able to view those changes within your timeline. And then ultimately, once you've finished working on the particular project or improvement and want to submit that resolution, you'll be able to compare those 3 different measures. And the way that you can do that, Greg, is there's actually, if we jump over to our other section here, I'm going to take a look at another board that we'll have within the showroom that's tracking all of that financial tracking here in KaiNexus. And so as we come in and take a look in the top right card here, we see this project financial tracking. So if I scroll over, we're going to have multiple columns that can be added in list or tree view here. We'll be able to take a look at the financial investment target, the financial impact target. We'll be able to take a look at the financial investment forecast, financial impact forecast, as well as, of course, the financial investment actual and financial investment financial impact actual as well. And so here we'll have a number of different examples where we can scroll down and start to see, for example, here, this initial investment impact target, how this changed with our forecasts. And then, of course, if we went in and resolved that item, we would capture the actual on here as well. All right. Well, before we switch gears, Greg, just a recap. So with these new features, as again part of advanced ROI, you can set your impact and investment targets for improvement. You can record changing forecasts throughout implementation, and ultimately we'll be able to compare your predictions with the actual results. All right, Greg, the next big item that I want to discuss is weighted scores. So we know that being able to rank improvements in projects using your own custom criteria is important. And so we built a way to help with the weighted scores feature. Leaders can create a weighted scoring system, allowing your organization to score anything from complexity, risk, priority, based off of a predetermined criteria. And so ultimately, this will help guide stakeholders to make strategic decisions on what should be prioritized within their organization.
So we're really kind of taking the concept of kind of let's just use the prioritization example. So before this feature, you could have a fairly one-dimensional prioritization schema. It would be something like 1 through 10 or low, medium, high. If you then wanted to, for example, do something where you had 7 or 8 criteria that you were trying to say, okay, what's the I'll use a healthcare example. What's the impact to the patient, and what will be the patient satisfaction to it? You can answer maybe 5 or 7 things, give each one of those things a number, and then you can do some configuration where you could even make each one of those things have different weights,
right? And
then come up with a final score. And then what we ended up realizing is that same type of methodology can be used and was being used by our customers to do things like, well, complexity, or to give an audit score. And so as we do usually is we built something that's configurable that can really match however you're currently doing things in the system, kind of a more one-to-one, so making that transition that much easier.
And to me, Greg, the first thing that comes to mind is a lot of customers were using pick charts, and they would use attributes for like an effort and an impact, which would help visualize that on the pick chart or the quadrant chart. Some people refer to it as. And I think that's great, but it's to your point, being able to add further context onto those specific values, or in having multiple values that are going to ultimately, in this case, we're going to see the priority example, help you prioritize what sort of items you want to be working on.
Let's jump in.
So once you have that weighted scores feature enabled on your template and have established your criteria, you'll be able to head over to the plus sign in the top right of your item, and you'll have the option here for scores, where you'll be able to add the specific weighted scores that have been enabled on your template. You also sometimes will see the specific weighted scores section maybe by default when you come in, and so you'll be able to come in here. And so what we've done, Greg, is we've set up a criteria for this priority score when I click in, and this is a very common priority score that a lot of healthcare organizations are using as well, is breaking it down into your pillars, in this case of equality and safety, people, finance, growth, and then being able to choose from that 9-3-1 ranking here. You can also add a multiplier. So to your point, as you mentioned earlier, if I wanted to further say that equality and safety, in this case, based off of my choice here, is a higher multiplier and higher value amongst these other options here, you can also have that as a part of the configuration in here as well.
So kind of major configuration options here are on a specific template. You can have a priority score always show up or not. You can add a type of scoring system. Then you can kind of have as many questions, if you will. In this case, I'm sure we're kind of showing 4 questions, so to speak.
Yeah.
Then the values of each of those questions you can define, and then what the multiplier is to that question you can define. So quite a bit of configuration on your weighted scores, and I think you'll be able to come up with something that makes sense for you if this is an area you want to go. I mean, this is certainly not something you would want to do for kind of just do it type of scenarios. I mean, this would be a little bit higher, kind of up the chain, if you will, a little bit more complex, a little bit more resource utilization being used to do this, a little bit higher risk, trying to figure out, hey, we can only do 20 major projects this year. We have 50 in the queue. Which of those should we do? This would be a great way to help figure that out.
Yeah. And so the way this will work, Greg, is we'll come in here now and select the options for each of these attributes, or if you want to use a question here. Let's say, for example, I selected 9s across the board. Once I've gone in and populated all of these, I can go ahead and save. And so that will automatically create a score, as you can see here, that 270, based on the choices we made in that particular criteria we put in place. What's really nice is you can also add these scores to a card on a board in List or Tree View. So if we jump back over to our other section and take a look at another link I have here, this priority scoring matrix board. Here we're going to have a number of different projects that have all included some sort of priority score. And so when you're kind of going through those projects in the system and wanting to tackle that next highest priority, you'll be able to come in, include that priority score here as a column on a card, and then, for example, can go in and sort this so that you have your highest priority showing up, and that's probably going to be the first project you look into and determine if we want to go ahead and move forward with that.
So we've been working on this all summer, actually released it in a beta version, and now we think this is ready for prime time. As with other kind of large features that we've released, we can't wait to see how you guys use it, because we know you're going to use it in a way we hadn't imagined. And so, and this is just part of the base KaiNexus.
Mm-hmm.
This is not an add-on module. So if this is interesting for you guys and you feel like it would be a contributing feature in recommended kind of top-down scenarios, then please reach out to your CE contact to get that configured.
All right. So Greg, we're going to move into some of the other features in our 2.2.10 release, and this is the small one that I mentioned before, kind of the mouthful of the user preference on maximum window size. And so if I click into, for example, let's take a look at this cardiac medication project here. So as I click in, you'll notice, Greg, that right now this is in an expanded view. And so if I was to, for example, come in and say, no, I want this in more of a collapse view and just see the smaller screen here, this is now a user preference, and it will remember that for me. And so if I click back in again to that cardiac medication here, you'll see that it stayed in that smaller view. This is where the debate comes in. I know, Greg, you are someone who likes to come in and expand and see things.
Well, it may
use
have
the full real estate of the screen.
It may have something to do with my age. I don't know. But I'm finding that the bigger the text, the better it is. And it's just one of these little things. I was noticing that I was always clicking to expand. I was watching other people use KaiNexus, and whichever you like, if you like the expanded, you're constantly doing it. And so kind of little things that we're trying to do to make the number of clicks less in your day.
Yeah, and I will admit I'm more of the smaller screen guy. That's just how I'm accustomed. But we know that some of you prefer to work with your KaiNexus windows expanded, and some will prefer to have them maybe not expanded. So the preference of your window size will now be saved and be remembered as a user preference. So we see it here on this item, Greg. The other place it'll do it, if I come back to our A3 example we were working on, I think I have a nested chart in here. So I'm going to click into this chart. The editing of your data in a chart, it's also going to do it within that screen as well. And so if we come in and edit our chart, this specific view, whether it's expanded or collapsed, is also going to be a user preference for you. So with that, Greg, speaking of charts, taking a look at this merge processes chart here, we are continuing to add enhancements to charts, making them easier to use, more customizable. Previously only available for charts on a board, you can now control the location of the legend in your chart. And so right now we'll see the legend showing up on the left-hand side of the screen here. So if we come in, hit the little ellipses to edit our chart, and then come up to the options section, you'll have the option here in the top right where it says legend, of where we can actually position this at a different place in the chart. So left, bottom is usually another popular one. Let's use an example here and select bottom. And when we save this, we'll now see that legend is going to move to the bottom of our chart here.
It's kind of legendary.
Yeah, I see what you did there. I like that. We should do more of these together. Yeah. Banna's not as quick on his feet. Greg,
we won't let Banna know.
Another thing I want to point out, I forgot to write this down, but there's the ability to zoom in, and this is really cool on charts, is if I wanted to, if I have a whole bunch of data, you can see here, this is actually spreading across the last few months here, but if you want to zoom in onto a specific section within the chart, there is the ability to, if you click and drag, you'll be able to actually view specific options within the chart. So another thing that I want to let people know that you can go in and do, click and drag to zoom in on the particular section of the chart, and then you'll be able to view those specific data points. All right, so let's jump back over into our A3 that we're taking a look at here. So Greg, you've been able to save to PDF for a long time, of course. We know that sometimes getting a hard copy in front of you on the right size paper is even more important. So now we offer the ability to commit your PDF exports to letter, legal, or A3 size paper. If you head over to the ellipses and go ahead and save to PDF, under the ellipses here, you'll see this portrait or landscape, and then you have the page size where you can say if it's going to be letter, if it's going to be legal, or if it's going to be that A3. And so specifically with our custom layout of the A3, I mean, if you're going to set up your A3s in KaiNexus and then want to in turn print those out on an A3 size paper and hang them up in the office like we've done with our little cheat sheet here, this is now a reality in KaiNexus. And I think that's huge for people as the A3 becomes more and more popular and it is being visualized as such in the system.
It's such a great problem solving framework, and I would say over half of our customers are using A3s, whether it's kind of a small local A3 that one person is doing it, or even much larger A3s that involve a team of people. It's a pretty powerful way to think through a problem.
Right. Last but not least, Greg, this is probably the biggest feature that was in this release.
Where are we going?
My personal favorite. So we've added new level type and attribute default icon options. So if we take a look at, for example, I'm going to jump out of our A3. We're going to come over to the admin section. And so I will start off first with, let's go into the level types here.
So we're in the administration area. So if you don't have administration access, then you would not even see this.
You won't be able to play around with this, but hopefully you have very creative admin level users in your organization that are.
It is amazing how beautiful we've seen people make KaiNexus.
Oh yeah.
With their boards and the different icons, and I think it's really cool to see that kind of people using the platform in that way, and they configure it. I mean, we've actually had customers get their marketing departments involved.
Yeah.
And
So and this specifically, Greg, probably for new customers that are going through onboarding and working with their implementation manager and kind of scoping out the network, as you start to create those different level types, those different types of departments and work groups, when you create a level type, you'll see that we've included a whole bunch of new options here by default that you can select from.
There used to only be 10.
Yeah, there was maybe 10 or 12 in here. Yeah. So Banna and I actually went to the fontawesome.com website. We went through every single icon.
That's Mr. Banna.
That's Mr. Banna. And so we went through every icon. We picked out the ones that we thought made the most sense on this screen, and we'll see in just a moment on the attribute screen. This was a heck of a project. We created a whole A3 around this. We were prioritizing different types of icons. It took us a good deal amount of time. So
I can only imagine.
It was time well spent. But please take advantage of these. If the icon is not showing up here that you're looking for, you can still go to our fontawesome.com website and pick out that specific icon code that you want to use. Make sure you add a color in there as well. Let's take a look at how this shows up in our attributes. So for attributes, when you're coming in, I'm going to take a look at an example attribute in here. And what we can do is when we're working with attributes, for example, we have a 10 to 100% complete percentage attribute here. If I go in and actually edit one of these, I can choose from the icons available here as well, where again, originally it was 8 to 12, and so now we have some more default options available. Again, don't forget to add that color in here.
So it really kind of unified, picking all of the icons, unified the entire color experience here as well. So kind of a lot of behind the scenes work to unify the product, and there's going to be more unification coming out. We've actually scoped out a bunch of unification.
Yeah, I'm really excited
throughout Q4 already. So
awesome, Greg. That actually wraps up everything that was on our agenda for today. Let's allow everyone who was able to attend to start asking some questions. If you have any questions or need assistance with the configuration on the features that Greg and I covered here today, please reach out to your KaiNexus customer experience rep. Also, we definitely encourage everyone to check out our support site at support.kainexus.com. This is a really great resource. It's basically a Google search, if you will, of KaiNexus. So if you're just getting started in KaiNexus, or if you're a longtime seasoned vet and want to see some of the other configuration options and take a deeper dive into that, you'll be able to do so here on the support site. Also, be sure to subscribe to both our improvement in KaiNexus customer blogs to learn more about KaiNexus and continuous improvement. We are constantly posting awesome content here all the time. We kind of pitched the showroom here at the beginning, and we'll see there's a blog post here on our customer blog all about that. So again, if you want to take advantage of playing around in the showroom and seeing some best practices and how other customers are using KaiNexus, reach out to your CE rep with that. And then be sure to sign up for our next training team office hours webinar. That's going to be on October 25th from 1 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Matt Banna and I will be taking a deeper dive into our latest 2.3 release, which just came out this past weekend.
It was big.
I'm really excited to jump on that webinar with him and take you through spoiler alert, chart annotations, credit impact splitting, a lot of really great features that just came out. And of course, for those of you at our user conference, you'll know what came, and so we'll take a deeper dive into how to take advantage of those.
Kiosk
mode. We probably won't demo that, but that is another big part of what came with 2.3 for sure. All right, Greg, it doesn't look like we have any questions come through.
One question. So just keep in mind that there's a question area on your panel, but one question did come through. Like the weighted scores, how do I turn those on?
So the weighted scores has been made customer facing now with that 2.3 release. Those are going to show up here in underneath the organization. So you will have to have admin permission. You'll see the option for weighted scores. We do have some resources with us, a support site. I do have some videos I've created to help walk you through examples and how to actually configure those. I would definitely recommend reaching out to a CE representative before you go in there and mess around with that. It will also be available in your sandbox environment, so that's probably a good first place to go and kind of play around with it and get used to that. But it is now customer facing along with our standard work, which again I have a lot of videos and resources on that as well. So
cool. One other question just came through. Someone really liked the maximum window size and they want to know how to turn that on.
So the maximum window size, again, when we come into a specific item, or if we're editing the details of our chart, for example, and the data within our chart, when you come in, you'll see right now this is in an expanded view. So if I go ahead and collapse this view, whenever I come into any of my item work panels, this will be in a collapse view. It sounded like the question that came through, they want that in expanded.
Great.
So once you come in and click that expanded, it will now be a user preference.
Okay.
Remember that.
And so when we say kind of user preference, it means we know who you are.
We know who you are. We know what you're doing.
And we know what you're doing. And we know if you kept that in an expanded or collapsed state. So there's nothing to do to turn on these user preferences. It's just going to remember how you last did it.
Yep.
So, okay. I don't think there's any other questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you for those, Greg. Thanks everyone again for joining. We hope these are beneficial. We look forward to seeing you all in our Q4 updates webinar, which will probably be early next year. Greg, any last words, any musings, anything for us?
I always have musings.
You do, but I'm putting you on the spot right now.
But I would just like to remind people there's no better day than today to improve your world, to improve your work. So please spread continuous improvement.
He's Greg Jacobson. I'm Ryan Rippey, and we will see you guys next time.